This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to say.
I'm trying to free your mind. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. At last.
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
Many of us have been brought to the brink. A lot of us here call it.
I can only show you the door.
Awaken others.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message.
Something's happening,
The world is changing every day.
Civilization is weird.
Time is coming.
That's
Train can't be stopped. And it's already here.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Tru Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. We are live today with Senior Pastor
Yep.
Tony. Is it Tony
Palow.
Palow? There we go.
Tony
All right.
Palow.
I was saying it right in my head.
You got it. Don't get it wrong, man.
Don't get it wrong. So we're live and thank you everyone for tuning in. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are live once again on the Tru Perspective, the TRU Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. Make sure you go to Rumble. Make sure you go to Spotify. Give a 5-star.
Come on now.
Give a 5-star review. And Rumble's the safer link. But right now we're on Facebook. We're also on YouTube. But Rumble is the safe link to go on, as they won't take it down. I mean, YouTube's been sending me a lot of emails saying I've been doing a lot of bad things on here. Just gonna adjust this camera really quickly. There we go. All right, so we are in the house. We are in studio with Senior Pastor Tony Palow of Restoration Church, Equipping for Life, and it's an exciting honor to have you on.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you on, actually. And what's going on? So we were talking off air for a little bit, and we were going over on some things that we might be talking about. Mm-hmm. You can go ahead and introduce yourself for anyone that doesn't know you and give a little bit of background.
First of all, thank you, Tim, for inviting me. I just wanted to say hello to my mom. Hi, Mom. Mm-hmm. And she asked about my podcast. Yeah, so I just shared it with her, shared it with my mom and my dad. So I just want to say hello. Thank you for inviting me. I know last week we kind of just didn't happen.
Absolutely.
But it's good to be here. My name is Tony Palow. I live in Rhode Island, live in North Providence. I have my wife and I have been married, oh my gosh, 33 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Tim. Yeah, man, thanks.
Congratulations.
I got 5 kids.
5 kids.
3 grandkids.
3 grandkids.
And then we have another one on the way, so that'll give us 4.
Nice.
But I'm a resident of Rhode Island, born and raised in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. So nice. I was born and raised in a great Christian home. I could say I grew up in the church, but the church didn't grow up in me, so to speak. You know, I had to really accept faith for myself. Mm-hmm. And I accepted really faith during the most tumultuous years of my life. Like when my brother passed away when I was 18 years old, died of cancer. He was 17. That's when it hit me. And that's when I always tell people asking questions of God doesn't really work because he never answers them because it just gets you frustrated. But that's when my journey began, asking God, like, why in the heck did my brother pass away? He's 17 years old. It makes absolutely no sense in the world. Right. You know? But I remember asking God questions, not because I was angry or maybe I was frustrated. I was asking him questions, not because I was angry, but because I really wanted to know the answer. And I wanted insight into the plan was with all this. And that's when God called me to be a pastor. He says, if you really want to know the answer, I'm calling you to be a pastor. But I didn't know he was calling me to be a pastor until years later, because he had asked me to go to Bible college. And at that point in time, I was 2 years in to become an architect. I loved it. I was great at math. I was great at calculus.
Yep.
And all that good stuff. And so I was 2 years in architect school in New York Institute of Technology in Manhattan. I was flourishing. I loved it. And 2 years in, my brother passes away, and I get this sense I should go to Bible college. And I thought, all right, you know what? I'll go. I'll learn about the Bible and stuff like that. And when I'm done, I'll go back to architect school. Like, I didn't know God was asking me to go to Bible college so that I can become a pastor.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if he would have told me, I want you to be a pastor, I would have said no. Or if he would have said, I want you to go to Bible college so you can be a pastor, I would have said no. But the Lord knew me. He says, I just want to go to Bible college. And then, like, my third year in, I felt like, I feel like I need to be a pastor, which wasn't a natural thought for me, because I didn't have a frame of reference. I had no pastors in my family. I'm like first generation pastor. So I've been a pastor, oh my gosh, for as long as I've been married, 32, 33 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and been in North Providence for 18 years, 17 years.
Okay.
And I tell you what, it's been a journey. It's been a journey. I don't see myself doing anything else.
So when you went from architecture, and did you like abruptly stop after your brother had passed away?
Yes.
My condolences, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
But so you had stopped. Now, what was this journey to be like? Basically, like you're looking for answers, or you have questions in you, but
yeah,
you have this. Okay.
Yeah, because I had I have a systematic mind. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And even when I was an architect, I was interested in how. Okay, we have to get there. Okay, let's put things in place to get there. Let's put systems in place.
Yeah.
And that's why that calculus was really intriguing to me. And architect was intriguing to me, and textures and all that stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, God, why? Because in my mind, if he would just tell me why, I would understand, but actually not, you know? So because I wasn't angry at him, it was more inquiring, and I was inquisitive. God was like,
what is this for?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So almost like, how did you do that? Why did you do that? Because I'm interested in that more that than I'm angry at you, God. Why did you let my brother pass?
Right.
So when he called me into ministry, that mindset followed me in planting churches and building leaders and seeing lives change, honestly. And so I did. I stopped. You can ask my wife, which at the time she was my girlfriend. And I'm that kind of person. I'm like, once I get something in my mind, I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
And I moved and I transitioned. And just like that. And because if I don't, then I won't do it.
Yeah.
It's like at the moment, it has to happen at that moment.
Once you make that decision, it's like you're a guided missile. It's like that. I see nothing else but tunnel vision.
Yeah, I've been accused of that.
Yeah, me too. I really think that's like a driving force for a lot of things that men in general, when we find something that's like, okay, this is, for whatever reason, I'm supposed to be here, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of get that connected source to you, and then it's speaking to you in some form. It's like, all right, I'm supposed to be here. I came from here, but something's pushing me this way.
Yeah, and once you have your mind made up about something, you're like, that's it.
Yep.
And if somebody can convince me otherwise based on principle, I'm like, okay, great, let's change it.
Right.
But other than that, once I have my mind made up on something, I'm like, full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead. Yeah.
Full speed ahead.
Yeah. I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that.
I see that in your eyes.
Yeah,
I'm like, what are you thinking about now?
Yeah. Well, I think the question that I have too about finding ministry, like jumping from that and finding ministry, like what was the process like? Now that you're in the Bible school,
right,
and you're diving into now, did you know scripture prior to this? Like, were you?
I wasn't very good at memorizing stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of was like, what's that scripture for God loved the world, and you know, I was kind of like that. I didn't have the sharpest acumen for memorizing stuff.
Gotcha.
I still don't.
Right.
I know scripture, but I'm like, I have to look it up to see where it is. So I knew scripture because I was raised in the church, but the scripture really wasn't in me.
Gotcha.
And even then, I wasn't the best student, but I was able to always formulate a plan and kind of form systems in my brain and to accomplish what needed to be accomplished. And I think it's just the grace of God in my life, honestly.
Yeah.
It was the grace of God in my life that I wasn't an A+ student, but I pushed my way through. I pushed my way through it anyway.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of similarities, honestly, from architect to becoming, going into ministry, because I still, one of the things that I was good at when I was in school was textures. I was always fascinated by when I see a building, like even I see this building, I'm like, oh wow, okay, what year is this building from? And interested in how it's built and what materials they use. So when I talk about systems in people's lives, building people's lives and restoration, seeing where they used to be and seeing where they're at now, there's a lot of value. See, education's not wasted. And God doesn't waste time with us. He recycles everything, right? And even our negative experiences, even when we were in the world, God doesn't waste.
Yeah.
He doesn't waste time. He doesn't waste experiences. We may waste our days through bad decisions, but I'm thankful that God recycles all that and uses it for His glory.
Yeah.
And so I see the Lord doing that a lot, and because it's not about hitting the target, you know, it's about following a journey into the process of the will of God for our lives.
Absolutely. I do think that, yeah, the journey itself is the experience, because like, I mean, you could go either path, right? You could either let that pain's important. People would say, I see conversations online all the time, or just in passing, where people are like, well, you know, why would God do this and why would God do that? And you know, granted, these are very understandable questions. One that comes up, you know, cancer for example, because you said your brother, but there's people who have had children that have had that happen to, and it's a difficult question to answer, and for anyone that's out there that has experienced anything like that, my condolences. But the best, at least for me, the best answer that I've ever come up with on trying to answer that, for a long time, I've been like, why would he do that?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? This is way before actually finding some sense to all of this. Even as a young child, I was always searching this deepness. My grandfather, God bless him, he instilled a lot of that type of information into me as well. But there was a lot of things that would stir me from that path on like, why would God do any of this, right? I had a rant the other night where I was like, why would God even waste his time? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
But and I went into all of that, but jumping back to why pain, to why some of these things happen, like losing children to certain things, and you know, why would God allow evil? And the best answer that I've ever come up with, at least for myself, is that God doesn't allow evil. Mankind does. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, God's not a cop.
Right.
You know, He's not a police officer. He's not walking around saying, "Hey, you stop. Hey, you drive carefully. Don't drink and drive."
Right.
It's the nature of the fall. We live in a corrupt world.
Yeah.
Like, as long as we have mankind on this globe, which it is globe, right?
Yeah, I think so. Or is it a flat Earth? Is it a flat plane?
Please don't get me started.
I know.
So, as long as we have mankind on this globe, there's going to be racism.
Yeah.
Like, if you remove every single human being from this globe, racism will really, hatred will be erased. It's just, we live in a fallen earth. We live in a fallen world, and we lived in a diseased world where sickness is rampant, and it hits some very sweet people, and you know, pain reminds us that redemption is possible. Pain reminds us that God is alive, and God, doesn't necessarily remove it, but he walks us through it.
Right.
And that's a very real message that it's unacceptable to some because we don't want to deal with it.
Right. No, yeah, I think that's part of their pain process also. I mean, I think all of us have experienced some degree of pain. Some, it doesn't matter on whichever level that may be, but we've all experienced loss to some degree.
Right.
And I think that this, like you said, God's not a cop. And some people will say, like, well, if he's God, he can remove it all. He's like, yeah, he probably could. Yeah. But here's the thing. Like,
he'd have to remove us.
He'd have to remove everything. You know what I mean? He literally would have to remove all of us because nobody can stand. Nobody can stand. What's the scripture here? It was like, if who hasn't sinned, cast the first stone.
Right.
I mean, it's as simple as that. I know that it's not an acceptable answer to many, but that it's as simple as that.
Right,
if we are to say that all evil must be removed, then we must remove ourselves. So he's giving us a chance to try and redeem that as best as we can, because we all fall short.
That's God's plan.
Right. That's his plan. And I do think that people find this to not be an acceptable way to come close to God. But it's as simple but as complex as it is, because I don't think God views life and death the same way as we do.
Correct.
I do think that he's not linear.
That's correct.
He's linear, or he's not linear rather. He's outside of space, outside of time, outside of matter. You know what I mean? We live here in this finite time.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting you said he doesn't view life and death, because we view, he views death as the Bible says is precious are the death of his saints.
Right.
Right. So we grieve death. For him, he doesn't grieve death. So he's moved by our pain. Yeah. But at funeral services, he's not. We're made in his image. He's not processing the same emotions we are at that moment. For him, it's precious that somebody passed who knows him, somebody passed, and now is in eternity with him. You know what I'm saying? So we grieve them. Really, they should be grieving us. We're still down here. Right.
Yeah. Right. It's funny that's interesting that you say that, because sometimes, like, my cousin had passed away in 2012 from a very, very tragic accident of his. But it resonates on, like, sometimes after you get beyond that, a little bit beyond that pain, and you kind of try and find some reason. I went through the same process of, like, why, but it's like, well, I'm down here and you're up there, so you probably have, the pain is no longer. They're not mourning. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing. So it's like we're dealing with it's simple, but it's complex. We don't know the full wisdom of God.
Right. Right. And I was thinking about this the other day with Job. He goes through chapters of asking God questions, and God is silent. And then all of a sudden God speaks up and silences Job by pretty much saying, hey, where were you when I created the heavens and earth? It's like, it gives us a real direction and template that God doesn't have to jump and respond to our questions. He's moved by our faith, not by our questions. And so, but I always say, go ahead, ask God your hardest question, and and let me know if you have an answer. And he doesn't answer because he doesn't care. He doesn't answer because he's outside of time and space. He's not moved, and he's not challenged to be moved to answer a question of ours.
Right. And I think too, though, like, some people think that it's just going to be this big voice that comes to you immediately.
Right.
Some things he works in signs, and he works in how your life is moving. Sure. And if you're doing but ultimately it's also up to us to move in that line too, to listen as closely as we can. Right. Because I think you can hear, and I think you can see, and I think you can, you see the moving parts. You know what I mean? You can a little bit, if you're trying to pierce through that matrix and look, maybe sometimes even through dreams. I don't know how close the line in Scripture is that, but I think there's some form of deepness that God does really try to connect to us. I mean, He wouldn't be wasting His time if he wouldn't. If he wasn't trying to, you know what I mean? He wouldn't. First of all, He wouldn't even send Himself here and God incarnate, in the flesh.
Yeah.
And
if He wasn't interested.
And I think He did that to experience, to have that human experience as well, because He had to, you know. There's a deepness in that. That I think when I was talking with Pastor Carl, I think I mentioned something along the lines of like. Jesus is the anomaly. He's the ultimate anomaly. You know what I'm saying? It's like Neo and being plugged into the Matrix, the ultimate anomaly.
I know, right?
You know what I mean?
It's like,
and I'm not trying to relate him to Neo or anything in that, but it has that
symbolism.
aspect.
It's the incarnation, right? He's fully God, fully man.
Yeah.
And He had to become fully man in order to understand what He was dying, who He was dying for.
Right.
And He came into our space, and He moved into our neighborhood. And God was very interested in doing that. And the only way that He could have stayed in heaven and say, hey guys, let me know what you need. But He moved into our neighborhood. And that's what John chapter 1, right, tells us. And it is a very powerful, the gospel is the most powerful story that ever hit mankind.
It is.
You know? It
is. It's the most talked about. It's the most talked about story for the last 3,000-4,000 years.
Absolutely.
You have this man, you know, come in the form of flesh,
claiming
that he's God. And
Come on now.
People are saying like, who is this? Who is this guy?
Right.
And then starts revealing himself and starts showing people, and like, you know, people say like, well, how could someone come as a virgin birth and do all these miracles? Well, if God can create, He can manifest.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that was His way of, in my opinion, to show us on how we can understand.
Right.
Because I don't think we could probably see Him directly. I think I want to say there's somewhere in the Scripture, either Old Testament or New Testament, where He shows Himself and everyone just flattens out.
Yeah, that was in Jesus in the gospel where He says, I am He, and everybody just kind of, His disciples were just like, they just slain.
because probably
when you get a full revelation of who He is, you can't even stand.
You can't even handle
presence.
it in the flesh, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So, I think he had to go through that process. He had to experience temptation. He had to experience
just like us.
Right. He had to experience the line of whether or not he could or couldn't sin or whatever.
Right.
But he also had to see us and for what we are.
Right.
Even though He can, but I think that's what the whole purpose of Jesus coming here is being God incarnate, is to experience the human journey.
Right.
Without being torn from the Spirit.
It's the unity of divinity and humanity in Christ. Both. He wasn't 50% man and 50% God. He was fully God and fully man. And I think that's the whole struggle with people, is that they're trying to figure out a God they lack relationship with. You know, but if we can figure Him out, then He wouldn't be God. And He's not a man. He's not. He doesn't have the mind of man, and we would never figure Him out. So there's an element of here that it requires really faith,
right? Because we can't customize Him, and people try to customize God. You're like, oh, if and I think they take out of context. Well, He made us in His image, yes, but that doesn't mean
mankind.
Right, we're still mankind. And we had the chance on being a part of that, and we still have the chance to be a part of that the paradise that he has set up. But, it's we have to turn away from this fleshly avatar and be in the full presence of our spirit. And people, people think like, oh, this is just what is faith based? It's like, what are you actually hoping for? I'm like, well, if you pay attention to some of the signs of the world and all that stuff, if there's evil out there, then there must be good.
Right.
If there's a demonic, there must be an angelic. You know what I'm saying? So along those lines.
And in being in North Providence, and this is the whole struggle, right? Religion was created because somebody tried to figure out God.
Yeah.
And because I can't figure Him out, I still want to achieve whatever is achieved going after God, but I want to do it my way. So let me construct a set of ideals and ideology to help me become a good person, right? And that's the religious spirit. That's the religion. And so that's what happens when I can't figure out God. Let me do it my way.
Yeah.
You know, let me, like the Tower of Babel is one of the first episodes we see of man saying, we're going to build this tower.
Yep.
We're going to reach. And so everybody could hear. And then that's when God dismantled everything, that spirit of religion. And sometimes I guess, I am outspoken, really, I am really strongly outspoken against the spirit of religion. And some people say maybe you should kind of tone it down some. And I'm like, I don't know. Because, and I'm really passionate about it because I see people coming to restoration. I see people coming to my church healing from that religious spirit. And we're cleaning up the mess.
Right.
So that's why I speak really strongly out against it, because religion will get you nowhere really quick. It'll burn you out, and it'll make you feel empty.
What do you think, for someone that doesn't particularly, because I feel like people take the context of they immediately relate Christianity with the religion, or I'm sorry, with finding Christ, with being a follower of Christ, with religion, or finding God with religion.
They'll say, "Oh, I'm not religious."
Right.
And I say, "Well, neither am I."
Right.
And they go, "Wait, what?"
Right.
But when you explain to them, this is a message you got to just keep. You know, religion makes it about me.
Yeah.
And I'm uncomfortable with that. You know, and relationship makes it about him coming into my world. So I didn't find him; he found me.
Right.
I was lost, and he found me. And so with religion, but it's so embedded into our culture that when you speak out against religion specifically, they get very offended.
Right.
But nobody wants to actually, nobody wants to actually have a sit-down conversation and talk about, what is one thing that religion has done for you and your family.
Right.
That's been positive.
Right.
And that's why people are flocking away from that the established organization and do things a certain way and be a certain way and behave a certain way and pray a certain way. People are moving away from that. Young families are moving away from that. Why? Because there's nothing there. There's nothing there. So relationship is an experiential. You get to experience theology. Theology is a study of God, right? So when you're in the presence of God and you experience the presence of God, you experience everything who He is. That's theology. Part of it is subjective because it's my emotions and feelings, and then there's a part of it that is objective because I get to understand His love and His kindness and His mercy and His grace for my life in an atmosphere of worship. And this is why when we have worship at Restoration, it's experiential.
Right.
It's not dull.
Right.
You go to a wedding, that's experiential. You go to a concert, a rock concert, everything's experiential.
Yeah.
But church is not supposed to be. Got to be quiet. Shh.
Right. Yeah. Right.
The world is experiential, but in church it's supposed to be quiet. God is very experiential.
Yeah.
And when He wants us to have that relationship with Him. So I'm outspoken. I'm really outspoken against it. I don't think I'll stop anytime soon because I've seen lives broken from it, and I've seen lives healed from it because of the revelation of that. It's about Christ, man. It's about Jesus.
Yeah,
that is it.
Yeah,
relationship with Christ.
Yeah,
simple.
Totally agree. I definitely agree. Do you think that that some of these, because I even spoke about this with Pastor Carl too, and he's brought that up in other sermons too. But do you think that some churches take advantage of that aspect of the relationship with God by creating these so-called experiences, but perverting it, as in punting a Bible or bringing in world. World music in the church. Do you think to some degree? Now, I know that's probably like it's a teetering line because at the same time it's like no, it's not on that aspect. It's not, but it's like I feel like when people start looking for the church and where they're going to and want to learn scripture and have that relationship with God and have that relationship with Christ, but they're being misled.
Yeah. So the part
whereas
So the part you're talking about is the entertainment.
Yes. Okay.
So the churches
there's entertainment and then there's
there's the and let me make it clear. Experience doesn't mean like it has to be like, ooh, wow.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm in the presence of God, it's an experience between him and I.
Mm-hmm.
If we go out for a cup of coffee and talk, we're connected, relationship there. There's an experience. You know what I'm saying? And so the problem is when churches take it into the entertainment zone where they're pulling at your senses rather than challenging and convicting your soul kind of thing. You know, because churches see it as we have so much competition and video games, and we have the what do they call those glasses? The
VR
the
glasses.
VR stuff. There's so much competition, so
Oculus.
so we have to match that competition. I'm like, no, we're not competing.
Right.
The gospel doesn't compete. You know, there's only one entity that reaches the soul, and that's the gospel.
Right.
That is it, and just present it as is.
Right.
Don't have to add salt and pepper. Don't have to add anything. No additives. This is just organic followership, discipleship of Jesus, man. Just present it. You know what I'm saying? You know, all the lights, all the fancy colors and all that. Yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. That's cool. But if you're not presenting, if a church is not presenting the organic gospel without all the entertainment factors, then what is the church doing?
Right.
You know, then you put yourself in competition. I'm not in competition.
In competition with the world, yeah. No, yeah. I mean, Restoration Church is the complete opposite from the cultural aspect and bringing the world in. But it has the music, it has the experience, it has the word.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? A lot of powerful word has come. A lot of powerful sermons have come out of there. And I've just recently been going there. You know, a few months.
How long have you been coming to Restoration?
I want to say since February. If I'm not mistaken.
A couple of months now.
Or December. I might be stretching a little bit of months in there, I think. But
now, how did you start coming? How did you hear about Restoration?
So, Cheryl and my girlfriend.
Got it.
They work together, and Naomi, she's my girlfriend.
Got it.
She had told me about this about Restoration Church, and I've always had this standoffish thing about churches, right? Because of what you said actually about the religious aspect, and also,
and I understand it.
And I've had this is part of testimony stuff that I'll have in other episodes, but I was always standoffish on churches.
Sure.
So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And although my search for God and my search for Christ has been consistent, I was still on the fence about Jesus. I was still on the fence about Yeshua. You know what I mean? I was still on the fence about it. And the reason why, I'll share this, is that the world was affecting my thought process on him. Because everyone's saying like, oh, this is this mystical guy, and he just came through a virgin birth, and like, how can you believe in
Could
this?
it be? Is it possible that you didn't have a problem with Jesus? You had a problem with people who served Jesus.
I think so. Probably. That's probably.
Because here's the deal, like Jesus, I don't got a problem. It's the people who I see who are serving Jesus act the way they act.
Right.
Because you don't see Jesus, but you see people. So your definition of Jesus came through and was formulated through your viewing people. That's
probably part of the influence there, and also too, like, I mean, like, and I'm not taking a stab at Catholicism or anything like that, but there's a lot of stuff that has come from Catholicism, the Pope and all that stuff.
Right.
So that in itself likely turned me off as far as finding a deeper level to it.
Got it.
And it wasn't until like recently, really. Actually, I'll give a lot of it to Naomi. Is that she was able to give me a different perspective on it. You know what I mean? And then there was many events that have happened in my life too, where that's happened, and where it's drew me closer.
Got it.
My son being much of the big portion of that, like the main, probably the main part of that.
Yeah.
Also, my grandfather, growing up, it gave me that influence too. On so I've had him in my heart. I just wasn't I guess committed to it because I was still on the fence about it because everyone was like, oh, God does this and there's evil on this, and like, how could this guy come in, And I was always limiting it to just he's just a guy, or he was just a guy.
Yeah.
He was just a messenger. That was my thought process then. And then I found like there's no way that he could just be just a guy, or just a messenger, or just a prophet that some religions refer him as.
Right.
He was more than that. I mean, he's the most talked about person.
And think about
figure.
it when people take God's name in vain, they use Jesus. They swear using Jesus' name.
Yeah.
They don't swear using any other name.
Right.
They don't take any other God's name in vain. Only Jesus.
Right.
Jesus in heaven going, why do they keep using my name?
Yeah, right.
Because he's more than just the guy.
Yeah.
They don't use.
You don't say Dalai Lama or Prophet Muhammad or whatever.
Or anything like that. They use the name of Jesus.
Right.
Think about it.
Right.
There's some power there, man.
Yeah.
Which just gives you the notion he's more than just the guy.
Yeah.
More than just the guy.
Yeah, definitely. And there's and not only that though, there's historical alignment with the scripture also.
Right.
The Greeks talk about him, the Romans talk about him. There's throughout courses of history, there's pockets of everywhere in world history where they talk about him.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, he's the anomaly. He's the ultimate anomaly to what whether he was in the flesh or not doesn't matter. It's he's the anomaly.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So he was plugged in like Neo. You know what I mean? Like he entered
So
in.
you've watched all the Matrices.
I'm a huge fan of the Matrices.
My gosh.
Huge
they
fan of
first
it.
started coming out. It was intense, huh?
Huge fan. When that first one dropped, I was like, wow, perfect actor for first of all, Keanu Reeves. You know what I mean?
I was like, when it first came out, I was like, okay, this is it, man.
Yeah.
This is gonna be the new thing now.
Yeah.
And at the last ones, I was like, it's okay. I enjoyed the first one.
Yeah. Oh, number
number two. Yeah.
Yeah. 1, 2, and 3. I know. Like 2 was like probably it drags a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's like building up that story to the last part. Mm-hmm. But man, what a phenomenal trilogy right there. Amazing. But then, it's a quad. It's quad.
It was 4.
It's a 4 now because
the fourth one I was like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, the fourth one I was like, it was okay. It was fun to watch. I'll give it that. But I don't know if it like really tied in the entirety of the story and they brought him back to life.
It was going in a different direction. So,
it was. I think it was. But yeah, 1, 2, and 3, and the first Matrix set it off like for
Big
sure.
time.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of like sci-fi thriller actions and all that stuff, like Terminator and all that stuff. Mostly because now it kind of relates to something now.
Yeah,
I feel like it's now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to mention that too when you were talking about the Tower of Babel. I feel that artificial intelligence is that version. Right. Is this modern version of the Tower of Babel?
Well, I agree with it because the book of Daniel talks about in the end times there's going to be an increase of technology.
Okay.
And technology has become its own mantra, its own God, if you want to see it that way. And I mean, the book of Revelation talks about that when the Antichrist comes, everyone will see him at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, when you read that 20 years ago, you're like, what is that? It's like,
right.
Boom. When there's some kind of action, everybody starts recording it live.
Yeah.
So how is it possible that when the Antichrist is revealed during the time of the tribulation, that the entire world is going to see him at one time?
Right.
It's because everybody's going to have their lives, live going at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole. That's going to
saying
be
the Antichrist.
The Antichrist.
Right.
Yeah. Is that what I said?
Yeah. I thought that's what you said. I was just trying to make sure I was following.
So, and the end times is going to bring in a new wave of technology that we're seeing today, and that's its own. And that was the Tower of Babel. Them using their technology to build something that was just never built before.
Yeah, right. Well, was it Nimrod? Right. He wanted to enter into heaven.
Right.
And then overhaul and overtake God's throne.
Yeah.
The arrogance of mankind is beyond ridiculous. I think that's an understatement.
You know who wanted to do that too? His name is Lucifer. Remember him?
Yeah. Right. He wanted his own thing. Yeah.
He was like, "Hey man, I should be sitting there, dude."
Right. And he got casted down.
Yeah. He was like, "Get out."
Well, I mean, that's basically that's the spirit of Lucifer right there. You know what I mean? Man's the evil arrogance. Yeah,
pride comes before the fall.
Yeah, yep. The arrogance of mankind trying to. I mean, they're gonna. Basically, what artificial intelligence is now doing, I don't know if you looked into CRISPR, if you're familiar with like genetic engineering and editing and all that stuff, but taking robotics, artificial intelligence, you know, these powerfully positioned human beings are, if you want to call them that, are looking for a way to immortalize themselves in the flesh so that they can rule over this. What does that sound like? I mean, their God is.
I saw a movie like that 20 years ago.
It's
crazy, man.
It is. It's a wild story, and it is a wild story. I mentioned that stuff on here quite a bit because it's just so relevant, and it's picking up speed. It's happening, you know.
And time is moving so quickly, right?
Yeah.
So they used to, years ago, a generation was like 30 years. You know, every 30 years we'd have a new generation, and it was a new shift of mindset, ideology, process, and stuff. Now it's like every 3 to 5 years that we have a whole new generation coming out. It's time. Things are trending very quickly. Time is moving very quickly. People, and the problem with this is that people are people getting amnesia. They are forgetting. And you mentioned before, pain is good. Because when you forget pain, when you forget past pain, when you, like, for instance, when you forget past wars, you find yourself in the same kind of wars 5 years from now, 10 years ago. They don't teach Vietnam. They don't teach any of these wars anymore. And they're not teaching them. And what's happening is people are putting themselves in positions to make the same kinds of decisions, fighting the same wars.
Yeah.
Because, you learn from history. And that's one of the things that I see in our culture. In our culture now, it's sad, and like Rome, America's not going to be attacked from the outside; it's going to be attacked from the inside. We're going to crumble from within.
I think we're experiencing our Trojan horse right now.
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Among many things, not even just the border, but food, water.
Yep.
We were earlier off air. We were talking about the military downgrading their policies on how to train their troops and in boot camp, and they're being less they're not being as hard on these new recruits and all that stuff, which you're getting these kids, basically kids probably from 18 years old, and you're putting them in through these boot camps, and you're not essentially scaring the hell out of them to get them broken and then rebuild their minds.
I read that article a couple of days ago where, because when I went to basic training in the Army in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, their first week was Hell Week. And that was like, I was like, I want to go home. What did I do? What am I doing here? I'm like, get me out of here. Like and that was it. They broke you, dismantled you to build you up again as a soldier. And they've changed Hell Week. First of all, they're not calling it Hell Week anymore because it's sounds kind of scary. Yeah. And they're essentially, the article was basically saying they're cushioning that, and not using that aggressive drill sergeant approach and building soldiers. Because when you build the soldier, you have to dismantle and then build. You can't build unless you dismantle. You can't learn unless you unlearn. Yeah. And so I guess, I don't know why they're doing it. Complaints. I'm thinking it's like a lawsuit. Like some mother sued, the Army or the Marines, and they're like,
a mother did.
I don't know. I'm just
it's
guessing.
probably leading towards that.
I'm just trying to think of the whole notion of this, because they didn't give the conclusion as far as why they're doing this.
Right.
You could only guess.
Well, I think if and anyone out there, if you look up the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 documents that the World Economic Forum puts out there, the UN, I'm sorry, the United Nations, but UN and the World Economic Forum, all of these entities are in bed with each other. The policy on some of this military downgrading and ousting and reformatting, where it's softening and all that stuff. The softening of the military it's all part of their policy. It's all part of this new policy. Why are they doing it? Well, I mean, look who we have in power. And I'm not even just saying. I'm not even trying to teeter on either line of the political spectrum.
Yes, you are.
The reason why I do say that is like it's in our face. You know what I'm saying? It's right in our face. It's right in our face. If you're still in denial, I don't know how much more it could be clearer to you, especially after COVID, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
But yeah,
it's a softening of society.
Of course,
it's a softening. We're elevating feelings above character.
Yes.
Feelings are important. I mean, we're not here to hurt feelings, right? And when we do, we apologize and make it right. But one of the things that's happening in the military is they're putting feelings above character. Because when you went through basic training, guess what? You came out different.
Yeah.
And that pain, like you said, no pain, no gain. That pain that you experienced, they brought you to a point of muscle failure. Because that's when you come to the end of yourself. And then that's when they begin to construct something new. But they begin elevating feelings above character. So right now the world is lacking, I should say America is lacking character as a whole, because we have platform subjectivity and feelings above everything else.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, we have, there's control terms like toxic masculinity and all this stuff. You know what I mean? I do believe that there's an agenda of emasculating men.
Hello.
More so than I've ever seen in like at least the last 5 to 10 years.
Right.
A complete emasculation, and the military is a big aspect of that. We're also seeing that in the police academies and stuff like that. We're also seeing that in institutions such as schools and colleges, and then in the workplace, and then in general society, where you get cut down because you have this assertive. They want to cut down the assertiveness of how men tend to be.
We're gonna report you to HR to retrain you.
We're gonna exactly. Yeah, there are retraining programs. They have retraining programs and stuff like that.
And there is, but this has been going on for years.
Sure, yeah.
There is a direct assault on the initiative of men, fatherhood.
Yes.
Which they're trying to overturn the statistics that are happening of the loss of fatherhood in the home, especially in the Black-brown communities. It's upwards of 80%, but yet they're not doing anything to celebrate men and raising up men and fathers. That's why they come up with the term toxic masculinity. So when you hear that term, you're like, ooh, I don't want to be toxic. So what do? You back down, kind of thing. You lower your voice. You don't use a deep voice and stuff like that. So there's a direct assault against that, which is really a direct assault against families. Really, which is a direct assault against marriages.
Yes.
Really, which is a direct assault against the plan of God for mankind.
Yes.
That's what it is, and there is no real initiative for fathers. This is why I was hoping, like organization like Black Lives Matter. I was like, this is definitely going to be the organization that's going to build Black men and Black fatherhood back in the home. You read their website, not one thing to celebrate and create grants for young Black men and to send them to college and to have initiative to send these kids to leadership classes and leadership school and teach job training. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Yep. So this has been a direct assault for years.
Absolutely, it has been. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because 80% Black and brown families, fathers, are removed from the home. Yep. And in the entirety, when you start seeing fathers being removed from the home, that's what, like you said, I'm just repeating back what you just said, is that you start cutting the family out. You start cutting the family down. And the BLM movement, at first I was the same way. I was like, oh, this might be it. This might be the new form of like civil rights movement or something along those lines. Where police reform can actually be implemented, and then within the cities, the communities can come together and stop shootings and stop murders and stop removing fathers from each other, and Planned Parenthood doesn't have to get involved with everything and see real healing take place. But we didn't see that.
Right.
What we did see was a complete separation and division of the country.
Right.
We saw, instead of, and granted, like, a lot of the emotional backlash from police brutality is warranted to a certain degree. I do think I do feel this way, because there is police brutality. It's not, it can't be ignored.
Yeah.
There is an actual racist, systemic system in place. Is it to the degree that that is said it is? I don't know, but it is. It doesn't say that it is in existence. It does exist. However, like you said, the BLM movement, it didn't appear, or it didn't even move towards creating lives to be better.
It didn't bring any healing.
It didn't. No.
And that's really, and this was one of the things that I got backlash back in 2020 as a pastor. I was like, you know what, man. I'm going to be, you know what COVID taught me? You know what? I'm going to be outspoken about what is right. And if I'm wrong, I'll apologize for it. And if I'm outspoken publicly, and if I'm wrong publicly, I'll apologize publicly. But one of the things it taught me was to really call out and say, this is not right. Because the problem is there have been too many people who are silent. This is absolutely not right. And this is why it's not right. Can somebody come in the organization of Black Lives Matter and make this right? And as we see now, it's really being dismantled from within.
Yep.
And it breaks my heart, because I was expecting some real change, and especially in our communities in Rhode Island, of Black families. But this is it now. This is where the government comes in, right? So when the government wants us to need them.
Yeah.
That's the, what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
Big government. Big government wants us, and so we were getting these stimulus checks. You're like, yay, thank you, government. And then we're like, oh, I got to pay tax on it? Oh, that's income,
Yeah.
So it's like, when the government can keep fathers, this is my process. Let me say it this way. When fathers are kept out of the home, families are needy. And that's where the government steps in as a hero. There is no direct initiative right now with fatherhood. And this is why, as a church, we celebrate fatherhood.
Yeah.
We still celebrate Father's Day and Mother's Day. I know we even got flack for that. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Right.
People say, Pastor Tony, you shouldn't, well, there's some people that are not fathers. I'm like, okay, well, today we're celebrating fathers.
Yeah, right.
Well, there's some people that are not mothers. Might be offensive to them. I'm like, okay, well, we'll celebrate, they could celebrate their day on their birthday or something. So it's we're making decisions based on not hitting a nerve.
Yeah.
And afraid of hitting a nerve, and we're being very, 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 very safe.
Yeah.
And as a result, the truth is not being told. And as a result, the truth is being covered to try to not hurt people.
Yeah. Yeah. Where people are too worried of offending.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Even when the intent isn't to offend at all. It's
Right.
like, how do you celebrate Father's Day?
Yep.
And then you have to be worried about offending so many people, maybe
Right.
maybe they've transitioned, and then for whatever reason they can't actually, you know what I mean? It's like we get into that level of we got to walk. I don't like this idea of walking on eggshells. I've never liked this idea of walking.
I mean, we're not here to offend people.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
But sometimes the truth hits like a brick.
Yeah. Right.
And sometimes it feels like a pillow. Other times it feels like a brick. And when it hits like a brick, we have to still say that was the truth.
Yeah.
And or even the facts.
Right.
I mean, we're ignoring the facts.
Yep.
It's like we're not acknowledging the truth and ignoring the facts.
Yep. But meanwhile, people will trust the science from people who have lied to you. You know what I mean?
Trust the science.
Yeah, trust the science.
And now we're not trusting the science.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a science major, but I
Right.
know we're ignoring the science right now.
Right. Right.
So
We're ignoring a lot of things as far as science aside, we're ignoring the relationship that we should be having, not only with ourselves as a society, but also with Creator. You know what I mean? Like, I think honestly, that is why everything is wrong the way that it is. You know what I'm saying? Why the world is the way it is because we are separated from Creator. Right. You know what I mean?
And we see, when we look at history, man, we see cultures and countries that have been dismantled because they disconnected from Christ.
Yeah.
They've disconnected themselves from God, the Creator.
Yep.
And we think God is punish. Let me tell you how it works. Punishment or discipline doesn't happen because God is throwing lightning bolts from heaven. As soon as you disconnect yourself from the Creator, things happen that were not designed to happen to you. When you're connected to the Creator, you live in favor. You live under the blessing of the Lord. You live under the blessing of trusting Christ through the power of the gospel. When I separate myself under that, I remove myself from the umbrella. So God's not in heaven saying, I'm going to punish you because you've been bad. There are, by default, natural consequences and supernatural consequences that happen as a result of not following Christ. And that's what happens. That's what's happening to America, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And in the West, the westernized countries are experiencing that, and any of the other countries that are under some tyrannical control, most of them communist, a lot of them under Islamic control also, are experiencing that persecution or that separation. And when you say to somebody who's like, well, I think, when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, people will say like, oh, well, you're getting preachy or you're it's the religious aspect of that stuff. And it was like, well, if you go through what he's actually teaching is actually to teach kindness and compassion and also standing firm in your belief and standing firm in your faith. And are we going to be perfect at that? No. But if towing that line between what is good and what is evil, you're going to lean on good, and you're going to steer away from evil as much as you possibly can, because it's always going to be at your doorstep, no matter what I think for most of us, no matter what you do, it's going to be at your doorstep. But if you know the way, and you know the truth and the life is through Him, then even if I say to people sometimes, and I think this is how I process it in my mind, is like, when I've had conversations like this, and the more and more I have conversations about it, the more and more gets revealed to me about it. And it's on the sense of, take the figurehead away and just look at the message, right? And then look at everything else that's in the world culturally, everything in the world that is a detriment, everything in the world that is a decadence, causing all of this famine or wars or whatever. That is anti-human. It is all of it is anti-human. All the poisons in the water, all the poisons in the food, all the poisons in the air, the stuff that is making itself out to be, or the transgender agenda and all that stuff, all of that stuff is anti-human. It's all anti-human. Jesus didn't preach any of that. So even if you take the figurehead out, the message still remains, is that this is not anti-human. It's pro-human, and it's pro-relationship with Christ and God. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's all about producing. It's the whole the world's agenda is like everything God does produces fruit.
Yeah.
Everything.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? He said Adam and Eve, procreate, have kids. He creates a church. He says make disciples, photocopy yourself, mentor, coach, make disciples, and make Christ the center of that. The world is opposite that. You know what I'm saying? The world is everything God created. I was looking, we have a new landscaper at the church, right? Okay. So I'm having a conversation with him. Years ago, when we put up the youth center down at the other end of our campus, I like holly bushes. The shiny leaf with the pointy, the
thorny things on it.
Yeah. I like holly. So I'm like, I want to put 2 holly bushes here, boom, because I like the little berries that are produced.
Okay.
you know. So I had the landscaper years ago plant 2 holly bushes. And I'm like, man, they never produce fruit. They never produce berries, nothing. So the landscaper comes and he goes, that's because you have 2 male bushes here.
Oh.
I'm like, what? I'm like, what the heck you say? He goes, in order for, and he says, it's pretty much with any fruit. He says, in order for a holly bush to pollinate, you have to have a female and a male. And I was like, I love science.
Yeah. Right.
Like everything God created has a sense of pollination to it. And the world is not pollinating right now.
Nope.
The world is not growing. Our population is down. Our numbers are down. Nobody's having children. Why? People are not getting married. And if they're getting married, it's 2 men getting married, 2 women getting married. And we know the science behind it. 2 men cannot get pregnant, and 2 women can't get pregnant from being with another woman.
Some would argue. Some would argue that.
I know that. But don't judge me because I believe in science.
Right.
So it's like the world has stopped pollinating because they stopped following the rules of the Creator. And when he's telling me about this 2 holly, I'm like, what in the world? So I did the research. I'm like, wow, I did not know that there was a such thing as a male and female holly bush. This is crazy. It's a little different. They almost look the same. But it says you need a male holly bush and a female holly bush in order to produce berries.
Go figure, right?
Go figure. And I've been thinking about this wrong the whole time. Everything. I took my daughter to New England Aquarium this past week in Boston, and we go, and really nice, all kinds of animals and fish and turtles and manta rays and stingrays and really interesting. And so and penguins. Oh my gosh.
wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
crazy. And then we saw a movie on whales. And so they were saying they bragged. I mean, they were bragged about the fact that all the animals, we don't capture anything from the outside and bring them in. We breed them from within.
Okay.
And we have areas for penguins, male and female penguins, to get together over there to have baby penguins. You know, and the fish and the turtles do what they do, and they kept saying, "Yep, we have the males and females over there." It's the science. God has His own science.
Yeah.
God has His own agenda. God has His own rules, and when even when we decide to do our own thing, and when we do decide to do our own thing, we're going to pollinate our own answers, and the pollination results is going to come from our own genius brain, which is 5% of our brain, and we're not going to experience the pollination of heaven. That's God's ideas, man. And God's idea says, I need a male. Push.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to dig it up now. I'm like, just maybe I will. I don't know.
Yep.
But so long story short, that's why we have not been having berries.
No berries on the holly bush because they're both males. Go figure. Go figure.
Who would have thunk it? Huh?
God is the greatest scientist.
Come on, He was the first one,
He was
right?
the first, yeah. It's interesting when I have conversations about this. I'm gonna have shout outs to Fake Mike Real News, Will Turbot. If you're listening, sir, I'll have you in here Sunday.
All right.
But questions of like, that to me is enough. Not even that's enough proof. I mean, there's so much proof that a creator exists.
Right.
Because there's always those questions like, well, does a creator exist? Sometimes you get the atheist aspect. It was like,
Sure.
there can't be a creator because none of this would be going on. It always points to the evil aspect, the immoral aspect.
Right.
But they don't consider that their morals are written on you. It's like the codex is written on you to be moral, right?
Yes.
And evil, like I said early in the beginning, somewhere in this conversation, is that the evil is just the separation of God. That's the only reason of why it exists, and possibly the influence of demonic energies or evil energies and all that stuff. Because there is a spiritual world beyond this. So where we're fighting many battles on many fronts. But the thing is that in relationship to the holly bushes being both males and not producing berries and fruit. There's a science to that. Obviously, you need a male holly bush
and a female
holly bush. You need a man and a woman to procreate. All of these things have a scientific backing with it, and that that in itself says that Creator has put in a law here,
Plan.
a plan,
That's it. A law.
a law,
Not a plan. A law.
right?
Because the law is principle.
Yeah,
And God says, I want it, and everything that God has created has a seed inside of it.
yes,
And when a woman and a man get together,
Mm-hmm.
man releases millions of seed, and one makes it.
Right.
That's the law,
yep,
Tim. The law.
yep,
You can't. You could break the law, but you can't change it.
right,
That's it.
right,
And if you break it, then there's consequences.
right.
And then we wonder why God is punishing us. Listen, we're living under the direct, defaulted consequences of our sin. That's it. We've stopped. America has stopped pollinating. Even there was a problem even with the bees not doing. There was
They're still having an issue.
Yeah, they want to spend millions of dollars because if there's no bees, there's no agriculture. There's no agriculture, we're in trouble. You know what I'm saying? We'll be eating apples made by Bill Gates.
we're gonna be making 3D printed apples and
Actually,
oranges.
this tastes pretty good. We're gonna lie to ourselves.
Yeah, right, right. Oh man, he's got burgers coming. I think.
Come on now, let's
You know what I'm
go.
saying? Stay
Yeah.
away from McDonald's, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
I'm
my
telling you, he
gosh,
owns the meat that goes in McDonald's and the potatoes.
He bought thousands of acres in the middle of
I think it was like 300 some odd thousand acres, something like that,
He
along
wants
those
to
lines of
expand
farmland.
Microsoft. That's what happened.
Yeah, he wants to get a bunch of servers and expand Microsoft and Xbox and all that stuff. Yeah, stay away from the burgers of McDonald's and Wendy's. Don't do the fast food stuff. If you can help it, don't do it.
Yeah. Good Lord.
I know sometimes if people on the road, I've been a victim of it, but it's extremely rare.
A victim.
A victim, yeah,
That's it.
yeah, victim of it, because it's the things that. The things that fascinate me the most, and I don't mean this in a good way that it fascinates me, but it's just trying to understand what the goals of people do, or men do, or weak men do. These are weak men, in my opinion, that create these things.
Yep.
What's that? I posted it not too long ago too. It's like weak men create, strong men create easy times. Weak men create harder times. Something along those lines. I'm butchering that right now, but. It's fascinating of even over thousands of years of history where these sort of things occur
We've
to
seen
human
it.
beings. We see this anti-human type aspect, and I've always wondered of where it truly stems from. Obviously, there's an origin story to it, but the consistency and the persistence of it is fascinating. Which it always boils down to me that there's an influencer in there somewhere, right? The one in the garden that spoke a little bit, and made his entrance, So finding, knowing all this stuff and finding and being in ministry and being and preaching the gospel, what does that do when you're forming these sermons? I mean, I know some of these sermons relate specifically to individual life, and granted, sermons and the scripture itself, everyone finds something new from it.
Right.
But when you have this aspect of the world that's in, and I don't know how much you pay attention personally to it, but you're obviously very much aware of it.
Yep.
So how do you incorporate that somehow without it flooding into the sermon as a?
You have to. It should flood the sermon.
Okay.
Because there's a part of the sermon that is application.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, for instance, I'm preaching through Galatians now. Right. So the Apostle Paul wrote the book of Galatians. He didn't write it to us, but it's for us. So you have to find out why he was writing the book of Galatians at that point in time. What were some of the issues? What was happening at that moment? And then to take the principles that he was teaching the church of Galatia and then teach it to us and then apply it to our lives. So so for the church of Galatia, they were pulling away from the truth and mixing in religion and teaching, ways that weren't consistent with the word. And so So there's a moment of application that when you hit that, you got it. For me, I got a moment. I'm gonna hit it hard, and I'm gonna hit it with love, and I'm gonna hit it with
There
discernment.
it is, right there. Yeah. Love.
I'm gonna hit it with compassion. I'm gonna hit it with conviction, because and I just have a way. You know, when you're convinced, I mean, conviction. All that means is that you're convinced.
Right.
And I have a conviction. I'm convinced that when the word is preached, that you take that moment of application, and that the revelation that was given to the church of Galatia, and that obligation that they have also is our obligation now to pick up that revelation and have that conviction. It's like once you get it in your mind, and once you're at that pulpit, I'm like this is it. And to preach the truth also means you have to expose a lie.
Right.
And there's going to be times where I'm going to go after a lie directly. And I'm going to go, hey, like this, you know? And I'm going to go after it hard with love.
Yep.
And with kindness. And that's a thing, is that I think we can't whitewash the gospel, man.
Yep.
It's the truth is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Oh God. It's like, don't they have that in the courtroom? You know,
Yeah,
you put
you
your hand
gotta
on
put
the
your hand
Bible.
on it, yeah, yep.
You know, is that gonna now say, you know, and replace that with just tell us how you feel, and tell us what you think you saw, and tell us your perspective and your perception and your process of what you of what you saw. No, it's tell us the truth.
Right.
And they value the truth so much that if you lie, you can spend time in jail. That's the courts.
Yep. Right.
We value the truth in church, and they value the truth in the courts.
Right.
So much so that if you lie, you're guilty of perjury and you're in contempt, and you get dragged away.
And it actually meant something, like, and it still should mean something, but it actually meant something then, that, if I'm putting my word on the Bible and on God, I'm just like, I better tell the truth, or I better, you know what I mean? I better.
And they remind you, remember, sir, you're under oath.
Yeah, you're under oath. Yeah, right. And that is like and using the Bible is your oath. Yeah.
So we're backing away from truth, and we're backing away from science. So truth is truth, and then science is facts, right? So science is the, science is repeatable. Science is observable.
Yep.
And science could handle questions. And that's what's happening now, right? In our transgender community.
Yep.
Nobody can handle a question. You ask a question, it's like, you're filled with hatred.
Yep.
But what makes science is we observe something and we go, I have a question. I want to see it again. And it goes through this cycle of you observe, you ask questions, you see it again, you repeat the cycle, you observe. That's a scientific method, right?
Yep.
And then we go, okay, that's science.
And that's how you develop the hypothesis.
Right.
Yep.
And that's when you turn it into a theory, hypothesis, into a fact, right?
Yep.
Gravity.
Yep.
So everybody gets offended with questions. 2020, I have a question.
Yeah.
It's like, you're being rebellious.
Right.
No, actually, that's how I learn.
Right.
You know, so we're pulling away from facts, and we're pulling away from truth. And if we're pulling away from truth and we're pulling away from facts, what are we actually doing? Folks, what are we living?
We're in the upside down now. We're in the upside down.
The house is
Stranger Things is upon us.
That's all these movies now coming out. It's like, living these alternative realities, man.
Yeah.
We're not pollinating. That's the phrase right there again.
What do you think about like things of cinema that actually kind of depict actual life, like nonfiction depicting real life, as in like for instance, I just mentioned the show Stranger Things. It actually is depicting like a demonic realm where it's coming out of the earth.
Yeah.
Or
right.
The Matrix, depicting that we're being plugged into this thing that isn't real, and like Morpheus, when Morpheus talks to Neo and he says to him, I'm paraphrasing, but he's basically telling him that the Matrix is the veil over your eyes.
Right.
You're born into this
System.
into this system, this subservient system.
Right.
And Neo immediately starts to reject it. Right. He's like, oh, this ain't real. You know, and he starts.
But he keeps getting called back into
Right.
it.
He keeps getting called back in. Right. Exactly. Yep. What do you think? Are you familiar with like Freemasonry, Illuminati?
Yeah, not 100%.
Okay. I know that they have the thing.
But I do agree there is something going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's lining up with everything that.
Yeah, I'm not. I'll say it this way.
Okay.
There's a lot of there's conspiracy theories and stuff like that, and a lot of the conspiracy theories are like, okay, wow, this is okay. We hate to acknowledge that some of this looks like it's happening,
Right.
Yeah. And all of these movies that were coming out 20 years ago are like we're seeing this now, and this is what happens when you break away from God's plan, you're forced to make your own.
Mm-hmm.
That is it.
Yeah.
When you break away from God's agenda, you're forced to make your own.
Mm-hmm.
And in making your own, you are denying truth, and in our context, we're even denying the facts.
Yep.
And we begin seeing now people living out their own agenda. And I saw this interview with a transgender one time, and they said, I am the way I am because people in my community have said that you were born a man, but you're really a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So the interviewer said, oh, okay. So that means that if your community says go back to being a man, you'd go back to being a man. And they said, yes. So this is it now. We're ignoring the truth, not living our lives by reality, not even acknowledging the facts. And I ask the question again, what are we doing? What's the end result of this?
Right.
And the end result of this is a godless society that's going to destroy themselves from within.
Yep.
When we break away from morality, this is not religion. When we break away from morality, there is an ultimate designer, and his name is God.
Mm-hmm.
And when we break away from that design, we're going to have to live within the realm of our own consequences.
Mm-hmm. That's
the message.
That's the message. Yeah. That's the message right
message.
there. That's that. I mean,
Bro.
it's that simple. It's that simple and complex, but it's really that simple.
Exactly. And if you know God, it's not scary.
Right.
But if you know God is the moment to say, Lord, I'm going to change my ways here and get in tune.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned a lot of stuff about this, like conspiracy theories that come to life or appear to be coming to life, and there are things happening. I talk about all these things, and I don't do it to be like doom and gloom. I like to try and make people aware of it.
Right.
But you said it right there. At the end of the day, if your relationship is strong with God, you have nothing to fear.
Correct.
And I tell people to be, don't be afraid of this. Be aware. Prepare. Prepare.
Right.
Yourselves and all that stuff. But don't be afraid. There really isn't nothing to fear, because at the end of all of this, there is a victory involved here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back too. I wanted to try and get your military career in here too, because that's important. First of all, like I said, I think off air is that I haven't had a veteran in here, and I've been wanting to get one. And when I read I literally just read it on the website the other day, equippingforlife.com.
TonyPallow.com.
TonyPallow.com. And I was looking over some of the website, and it said, military veteran. I'm like, oh. Well,
cool.
I'd love to bring this up. So, can you take us to where you began your military career and get into that, and how you got into that, or why you got into that too?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call it a career. I was like 8 years in. That's pretty. That's a good. So the thing about being in the military, it just reinforced some things about who I was and who I am as a person. We have a lot of soft people. I'll just say that.
Yep.
And we have a lot of people who back away from challenges, who quit, who stop doing things, who get their feelings easily hurt. And the military, what it did was it reinforced what my parents always said, never quit. And my mom, I remember her saying to me, I remember in kindergarten, first grade, if anybody ever hits you, you hit him back. You know, and so the military and reinforced something. I still fold my dresser drawer the same way. My socks are like honest. My t-shirts are still tucked. I fold. My closet is still. I have my white shirts, my flannel shirts in one section.
All organized.
It's crazy.
Can you still bounce a quarter off the?
No. So I just, but the way I think, I'm like but the military has reinforced that basic training, advanced training. I remember people dropping and quitting, and like I feel like quitting. I feel like quitting basic training and stuff like that. I remember when Hell Week, they called us off the cattle buses, and we had a huge duffel bag and then another duffel bag here, and they had us running with these duffel bags, right? And then they forced us to take the canteens out as they're swearing and screaming at you. You had to drink 2 things of canteen, do jumping jacks and doing push-ups, and there's like 50 guys were all vomiting on the ground, like cement, ground, and they're having us doing push-ups in the vomit. That was hell.
You still got to do it,
part of hell, but I remember graduating a better person. I remember graduating. I shouldn't say. I hate that phrase. Man of character.
Okay.
I remember graduating boot camp thinking, you know what, I could do anything that I apply my mind to. Now this was right before my brother passed away. So when I went to boot camp, so my brother passed away, and God takes all that energy and all that focus that I had in boot camp, and puts it into ministry now.
Yep.
And I'm like, people are concerned that I'm too driven, and maybe I am, but I feel like I'm more led, than driven. I spent about 9 months in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Storm in the middle of Saudi Arabia. We went into Kuwait for a short time. Of course, not as intense and dangerous as our most recent wars in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but I didn't see a whole lot. But I remember coming home. I wasn't engaged yet. I was still dating Susan.
Yep.
But I remember coming home having nightmares. I was like I came home and I realized that that the government gave my family and my girlfriend and my parents debriefing counseling.
Yeah. Okay.
Asked me if I got debriefing counseling.
Did you?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Okay.
I had no idea.
But they gave your family?
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
wow.
Right. So they changed all that now.
Yeah.
With all the PTSD. But I remember coming home and having some really bad nightmares for months at a time, 6 months at a time. But one of the things my parents did was I come home and they had a party.
Yeah.
And it was like 50 people, family members, church people. And I'm like, and I remember sitting there going, what in the world is going on here? I remember feeling very overwhelmed. And I struggled. That's when my struggle with anxiety really happened, and discouragement really happened. You hear me tell my stories in the church. The anxiety lasted about 5 years, and like people would say, you don't really come across as an anxious person. I'm really not. But when I came back from Desert Storm, I just, carried all that just negative energy. And there were people in my unit, attempting suicide and stuff like that, because it was really a very sad environment and stuff. But even then, I felt like God had his hand on my life. I always felt like even when I wasn't close to God, I felt like God has a plan for my life.
Right.
Like I wasn't even a pastor, and I felt like God has a plan for my life.
Right.
So I spent 8 years. I never really went active duty, just wasn't my thing. I did Desert Storm, and when I came back from Desert Storm, they wanted me to stay. They said, we'll give you sergeant stripes and all that stuff, and they made me promises. I was like, no, I'm done. I'm done with all this.
Yeah, right.
And So I usually I'm still I still connected to a lot of friends from Desert Storm on Facebook and stuff, which is really interesting. But the one thing that I take away from being in the military was the sense of discipline and the sense of accomplishing a mission when everything's against you. Because I remember with my platoon, we would, accomplish a project during the day and be like, no problem. Yeah, we did it. High five. And then they would keep us up. We would have sleep deprivation for like 48 hours. And they would say, okay, do the project now at nighttime with one flashlight.
With one flashlight,
yeah,
all you guys go.
and with no sleep in the middle of the night, and the same project that we accomplished 2 days prior, we did well. Now we're having trouble. But I remember saying, guys, we can do this. And I always have this mindset. It's like, when was the last time you did something for the first time? Just do something, challenging that God is going to help you with. Do something with the guidance and the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And He's going to help you, man. Do difficult things.
Yeah.
Don't do anything easy.
Yeah.
Do something impossible and watch God come in with supernatural invasion.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the word right
That's
there.
the word right there. I love that question too. It's like doing something, do something for the first time.
Yeah.
When's the last time that you did something for the first time? I love that question because I love hearing that question because I'm constantly thinking of things like that, and I think that's why, doing the podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
I'm putting myself out there.
Yeah.
Not that it's the first time putting myself out there per se. And here's the thing too. I say this a lot too. Is like I don't. First of all, thank you for your service.
Oh,
I want.
So when people say that, what am I supposed to say? You're welcome.
I mean,
it's always all good. Thank you for your service. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
I'll put it this way: you're putting yourself in a situation.
You're welcome, by the way.
Yeah, potentially putting yourself in a situation where, like, it's life or death, quite literally. Other than the training that you get. But yeah, like I say this a lot. It's that I don't even like necessarily being put in the spotlight. I really don't. It's actually a thing I don't like for the most part. But
sometimes you do. You have to put yourself.
That's the thing. I've always felt compelled to.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's just like there's this driving force that says, it's kind of like quite literally, it's kind of like God saying, nudging a little bit, just boom.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right,
Get out there. You know what I'm saying? You have a message there. You have a word to say, or you have a connection to make, or something.
And that's what I have trouble with people saying. Well, I don't want to be out there. I don't want to put my.
Yeah.
But you're the so. We say Jesus is the platform, but it's not really accurate because Jesus needs a platform.
Yeah.
And your life is that platform.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because if Jesus was the platform, that means that who's on it?
Right.
I'm not on it. I'm the platform, and Jesus is using my life to really shed the gospel and share the light of Christ and share hope.
Yeah.
So you need to be out there.
And to be that example. Yeah.
The Bible says you can't hide a light under a bush.
Yeah.
It's got to be on the top of a hill, on a city where people can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be out there.
Yep. 100%.
None of this, not me. Well,
yeah.
If you want to make an impact for Christ, it's got to be you being out there.
Yeah. I'm always telling myself this too. I got to be careful what I'm praying for sometimes too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
Because there's things that I've asked for, or like I don't necessarily ask for things, but I ask for to be utilized. And sometimes, more often than not, you are put to where you're praying for, right? Or to how you kind of visualize yourself trying to form.
Right.
But it's almost like, you know what, this is your plan, but utilize me in this plan. Utilize me in this way, or utilize me if it's your will, then make it your will. So yeah, I've learned to be careful on what I'm actually.
That's wisdom, right? there.
Yeah. Because here I am on a podcast talking about all kinds of conspiracies and things, and people, you get the love and the hate at the same time. So
right. That's it.
If we have a little bit more time, can we talk about equipping for life?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Just go through that.
Absolutely. So there's equipping for life and then equipping consultants.
Okay.
So and then there's married for life.
Married for life. Okay. All right. Nice. Everything's a trinity.
Yeah. So, well, Married for Life is the most obvious. My wife and I are marriage coaches. I'm a counselor. I have a clinical degree in counseling.
Yep.
But I prefer coaching
Okay.
because the difference between counseling and coaching is counseling is an archaeologist. They dig. Coaching is an architect. They build. And so with the Equipping for Life, I found myself mentoring and coaching pastors.
Okay.
Right. And it got to a point where, see, when the Lord helps you build something, you have to officialize it by giving it a name. And I'm an equipper by nature. I give people the tools. You know, first time I'll give you a cup of water, I'll give you another cup of water, but then I'm going to teach you how to go to the well and how to draw the water yourself. That's equipping. So equipping is not so much giving you the tools, but equipping in the original Greek has a healing nuance to it. It's giving you equipment so that you can heal from a broken leg and stuff like that. So Equipping for Life is something that I coach pastors and leaders on how to formulate a plan for their staff. How to I do personality tests for their staff members. I help them formulate a vision, a mission statement, a business plan for the church, church planting, church training. And so what I found happening is the same kinds of things I was teaching inside the church, I also got connected with business owners. And I was teaching the same things, principles. You know, so in the business world, is like I'm teaching the same things that I was teaching in the church on how to develop a business plan, how to build the business, and how to multiply the business. But I was like not preaching Jesus, or maybe I was talking about Jesus without talking about Jesus, kind of thing. So I started an LLC called Equipping Consultants. So I work with businesses in the community. So I work with business in the community. It's not so big right now because, you know, I got to manage my time and stuff. But I'll do personality tests with leadership, with supervisors. Okay, there's a couple of shops on Mineral Spring that he wants me to do a staff training, and I'll say let's just focus on the supervisors, and I don't know anything about their product. I don't know anything about what they sell, but I do a lot of staff building, management building. I changed some of their acumen. I changed some of their process to help them reach their goals. And sometimes they have a business without no plan.
Yeah.
Gotta have a plan.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's the Equipping Consultants part of it, the LLC, which is the same thing for businesses, that I'm doing the same thing for churches. And so at Restoration, we plant churches, we build leaders, we release missionaries, evangelists, prophets, apostles. So we don't lose people, we launch them.
Okay.
So that's the whole mindset of equipping. I'm an equipper by nature, and I help people get to where they need to be.
Nice. Yeah, and you just did that in Argentina too, right? Was it Argentina?
Yep. We did marriage coaching and also leadership coaching.
Oh, you did that also. Wow. Nice.
Yep. My wife and I went there. And talk about steak, talk about burgers.
Yeah.
If you want to, yeah,
I bet the food out there is
amazing food. Oh my gosh, amazing.
I imagine.
Amazing.
I imagine they got a heck of a leader now too.
Oh my,
Yeah.
Palow.
Javier
Yep.
Malev, I think his name is.
Yeah. He says, I don't want to be like Venezuela and Honduras.
Yeah.
Putting it back on
turning,
small business, you know.
Yep. That's got to be exciting that you go and meet, you know, new people that are just hearing about you, or vice versa. I don't know how the relationship builds, but that's awesome. That's really cool.
I'm out in the community a lot, you know. I'm very rarely in the office. My office is wherever I'm at.
Okay, nice.
You know,
that's awesome. If anyone's in the chat, I appreciate. Actually, there's a ton of you in the chat. It looks like. Appreciate y'all for coming out. If you have any last minute questions, please post them. That's on Rumble, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube right now. But it will go up on Spotify in the next couple of days. Any other plans coming up for you as far as any missionaries in other countries or other states or anything like that? Like what's the news coming?
The new thing coming up is I would love to begin because we have a school of preaching we started at the church. I would like to, under Equipping for Life, start a public speaking academy.
Wow.
Public Speaking Academy.
Public Speaking Academy.
Warren Buffett, he's a billionaire, says, I have one certificate on my wall. He says, I have many degrees. He says, I have one. And the one certificate that he has on his wall is the public speaking course that he took with Dale Carnegie in 1956. He says, the number one gift trade that I work on every year that I put my money into is the gift of public speaking. That is it right there. And for you, you're a public speaker.
Yeah. Talking about me?
Yeah, I'm talking about you.
Yeah, I guess
you.
I am.
I'm pointing to you.
I am.
There's no one else here.
Apparently.
So I want to start a public school, a public speaking academy.
Okay.
And this is the whole thing, is that there's a lot of, if you're a business owner, you're a public speaker.
Yeah.
If,
Yeah, because you're the face of the business.
You're the face of the business. You're if you're in a restaurant, if you're a waiter, you're a public speaker. If you're a waitress, you're a public speaker, because you're selling a product. Obviously, if you're a salesman, you're a public speaker. If you work as a car dealership, you're a public speaker. Every business that anybody is in that requires you to speak to people, you're a public speaker.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's my next venture.
That's awesome.
Public speaking
When's
academy.
that? Do you know when that's going to be?
Sometime next year.
Sometime next year. Okay.
Formulating a plan right now in my head.
Nice.
And writing it down too.
Yeah. In God timing. That's awesome.
In God timing. That's it.
Well, listen, Pastor Tony of Restoration Church, Equipping for Life, and TonyPalow.com.
Got it.
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
As a military
Absolutely.
veteran. Thank you
Yes.
for your service as a public, as a pastor.
Yes.
I've learned a lot coming out of just going into Restoration Church, and I'm fully convinced on the teaching of Christ.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I got to that point. I'm glad that I've had some very personal breakthrough moments in my life leading up to that point, and then coming to Restoration Church and meeting you, meeting Pastor Carl, Pastor Mike, Angel, Noel, all of these guys,
good guys.
Cheryl, shout outs to Cheryl, Barbara, everybody, Naomi, for even introducing me into the church. It's a place that I never thought that I would step in.
Come on now.
100%, 100%, and I never thought that I would step into a building of the gospel and actually dive into it. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful to God, but I'm also thankful to everybody else that's helping with that. You know what I I'm and you guys do a hell of a job. And I don't and I'm being light on the hell word. I'm maybe a better choice of words. You guys are doing what's supposed to be done as far as like the sermon and the word and all that stuff. I appreciate you. I love you for coming.
Yeah,
thank you for your
Tim.
time.
I appreciate it, man.
you, brother.
Appreciate
I really
you.
do.
Take care of yourself, huh?
Yes, you
Thank
too.
you, bud.
Thank you so much. Everybody else that's out there, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. Oh, real quick before you go, just shout out your website one more time for everybody.
Okay, so a couple of websites. The church website is restorationchurchri.com. My website is TonyPalow.com, or you could look at Married for Life Ministry.com. All of those will take you to where you need to be. Check us out, subscribe, follow. We're on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, Tony Palow, and then Coaching Marriages, and I'm also on Facebook, Tony Palow, and Married for Life. And you'll see my wife and I picture and stuff like that. So follow us. We only have 5 followers, so help us out.
Yeah. Build up those followers. Those followers matter. They really do. They matter.
Come on now.
All right, brother. I appreciate you. Love you coming on. And thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody. One more time. Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. The Tru Perspective, the TRU Perspective. Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. I love every one of y'all. Appreciate y'all. God bless. Thank you.
This is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth. Nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to sing.
Trying to free your mind. It is this feeling that has brought you to me.
At last,
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
many of us have been wronged, break. A lot of us here have called
I can only show you the door.
to awaken others.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message. The world is changing every day.
Civilization is weird.
Time is coming.
At the
Train
tipping
can't be stopped. It's already here.